I'm going to begin, Naomie Harris. I mean, as an actress, you must get sort of so many screenplays sort of sent your way, but this is quite a sort of truly special piece of cinema. Could you tell that right from the off?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like read scripts and kind of analyze them like, oh, all the elements right? And, you know, I just read it and think, do I have an emotional response to this? And by the end of reading Moonlight, I was in tears and so deeply moved. And I thought, you know, if I feel this way just from reading the script, this is going to be an incredibly special movie.
Having sort of said that, I mean, so much of this is sort of established in just the look of it, the kind of music, the sort of cinematography, stuff that I guess doesn't come through in a screenplay. So were you taken aback when you sort of sat down to watch the finished product at what Barry had kind of achieved with this film?
Yeah, I definitely was. I saw it with my family, and we all went along to a private screening, and we were all in tears. And my family are the harshest critics, so but they were so deeply moved by it. Yeah.
And you've said in the past that you always try to play very positive representations of black women on screen. I was just wondering what it was about this particular project that made you think, actually, because it isn't the most kind of positive portrayal of something, that made you think, I actually I'm going to go back on what I said. I'm going to take this one on.
Well, I really struggled with it in the beginning, and actually before I signed on to do the movie, my agent said, well, look, you're not sure about doing this movie, so speak to the director. And Barry just said to me, this is my story. I don't want to ask you to play a stereotype, but this was my mother's journey, and was Terrell, the writer's journey as well. So we have a choice. We can either pretend that didn't happen and kind of whitewash it out of history, or we go there and we tell the story in a completely different way without it being stereotypical and showing the true complexity of the character. And I thought, well, no one's ever asked me to play their mother before, and nobody said that they're going to, you know, play this kind of role, or will offer me the opportunity to play this kind of role with that level of complexity. So I couldn't say no.
Did you speak to Barry about kind of his own mother and what she was like, or did you really want to treat this as a kind of fictional creation and really come to it your own?
So Barry would often say, you know, wow, you're reminding me so much of my mother. And I know that on set he found that quite difficult at times. But we didn't really discuss it in terms of, I didn't meet his mother, I didn't delve into his story, because ultimately when you get given a role, it's yours to create, and you have to find the right elements that work with you and connect with you. So it was about me. I had a month before we started shooting, and it was about me doing all of my own research to find all of that and create the narrative that worked for me.
But given the kind of personal investment he has into the character, did you feel a kind of sense of pressure, particularly in the sort of early stages, of kind of having to portray someone that he has his own kind of perception of, I guess?
No, I didn't really. You know, I just wanted her to be as truthful as possible, and I felt a responsibility to all of the people struggling with addiction, the women struggling with addiction that I'd researched, that I'd had the opportunity to sit down with and talk to. And I felt a responsibility to tell their story, really. So it was a generalised sense of responsibility, but not specific to Barry's mother.
And it's very easy to sort of be critical of a mother who turns to drugs and kind of disregards her children. But in many ways, I mean, it's a real tragic situation where the perpetrator can be as much of a victim as though she's kind of hurting.
Yeah.
Did you have to try and find that empathy? And just generally speaking, do you always have to like and pity the character you play in order to sort of embody them?
I think you have to have compassion, and I think on some level you have to fall in love with that character. And for me, that was a real journey, because I stood in judgment of her as well. I was like, she's a bad mother, you know, she's an addict, and how can she be an addict and have her son? And I think the biggest way for me of connecting was doing my research and discovering that the vast majority, in fact every single woman that I researched and that was interviewed, had been sexually abused or been raped at some point in their life. And it was almost like the trauma of that created a split in their personalities, where they had this facade of like, I'm okay, but inside there was so much pain and so much torment that they were always looking for something to get them out of that pain. And that's why they were attracted to crack. And I realised that actually that's no different from you or I, because actually we all have a well of pain in us from somewhere, from some trauma that we've experienced, and we're all trying to escape it in different ways. Some are less destructive than others, some are more socially acceptable than others, but ultimately I realised that the divide between me and Paula was not that big.
And we don't actually dive into her own backstory as such, but did you create one anyway, just to help you give some context?
You have to create a whole backstory, and you know, and that's when from creating her story, I was like completely in tears because I realized she can't express love to her son because she never had it. You know, you can't give what you haven't received.
And I was reading that you shot this in a very limited amount of time. It was sort of during the promotional tour for Bond.
Yes.
I mean, that must have been quite difficult to get in the headspace. I mean, particularly when you're sort of promoting the film, when you were promoting James Bond, because you must have been so kind of caught up in this particular role.
Yeah, it was very difficult, and they're completely different worlds. You know, you go from the glamour of Bond to, you know, Liberty City in Miami, which is one of the most deprived neighborhoods in the United States. It's a huge shift, and but it really helped me, you know, to have that kind of massive culture shock to get into character. But it definitely was not easy. You know, I definitely had to do a lot of work to find this character.
And I think you're the only actor who works with all three versions of Chiron in this movie. Did you find it easy or quite challenging to always view them as the same person throughout?
I found it relatively easy to see them as the same person because I think when I'm meeting each version of my son, I'm in such a completely different emotional state. You know, in the beginning with my younger son, I am, you know, holding down the addiction and keeping it secret. In the middle section with Ashton, who plays my son, then I am completely lost myself to addiction to the point where I'm selling my body in order to feed my addiction. And then the final stage, obviously, I'm in rehab and have turned my life around.
And just very quickly before I go, changing the pace a little here, The Jungle Book is obviously coming up next for you, where you play Nisha. We've recently seen a retelling of the Kipling tale. I just wonder how you think this one's going to differ from that.
I have no idea because I haven't seen it, but I know I love Andy Serkis. I know he is the king of motion capture, so I'm sure that it's going to be extraordinary, and I cannot wait to see it. I'm so excited. It's been like 2 years in the making, so come on, guys.
Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey, you guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yes.
Nice.
Hey!